Hey guys, I thought I'd do this before I get ready to go to work. This may or may not be uploaded today and premiere today, which we'll see. It might even upload on Friday, so not this Friday, but a week from this Friday. Probably more than likely to have some content ready for you guys. But I wanted to come on here and talk about something that I did a video on, and I know some people think, well, you keep constantly talking about the same stuff over and over again. Well, but that might be true, but here's the thing, and I say this with all due respect, no offense. I talk about it every once in a while, because sometimes, there might be people that don't catch the original that, basically would like to, maybe hear an updated version. Like they don't catch the original, but people say you need to hear what he has to say. And sometimes myself and others will do like updated ones and be like, okay, here's this. And when I look at what's known as the Lustful milk gag, at first, as I've mentioned before, I never knew what the terminology, the trope name for the gag that we would see from the early days of Looney Tunes, like Swooner Crooner, if you will, which was a Porky Pig cartoon, or the Popeye short Parlez-vous Boos, Parlez-vous Woo. I never knew what the terminology was for what happened to the characters in there, because in Swooner Crooner you had a brown hen, kind of a brown and black hen, and I say that with all due respect, no offense, that's just how the hen was colored. But you have her melt down into a wavery, ripply little puddle, where basically she melts down and all you see is like a little frill at the top, and she's just shaking a little bit like she's an egg being fried. And then Parlez-vous Woo, which at the end you had Olive melt into a running puddle of butter that flowed down the floor with just her smiling face on top of it. And of course, moving on later on into the 80s, mostly the 90s, and some of the 2000s, you get a lot of examples of these. I mean, Tiny Toons and Animaniacs really took it home with, Tiny Toon-wise, with characters like Babs, Plucky, Buster, in their own interpretation of doing it. Animaniacs with Dot, Minerva Mink, twice, Wilfred Wolf in one of those shorts, and other animation stuff like Groove High has done it. Groove High did it with Zoe. Captain Flamingo did it with Elizabeth, and so on and so forth. But they're not the only ones, because there's even a lot of fan works and a lot of official work that does the same thing. But why is that? Why is it that we have that gag in there? Since almost the beginning, I wouldn't say the beginning of animation, but close to it. Well, it's real simple. The reason we have the Lustful milk gag, basically, is mainly due to the fact that visually, someone, in my opinion, way back in the day, decided that they needed a visual representation of how a woman, and even a man, feels when they're attracted to another, and that person they're attracted to acknowledges them in some shape or form. And it ended up being basically, what we see. The Lustful milk, the visual representation of a character melting became the answer. I mean, as I've said before in a video, there's an episode of a classic sitcom called Major Dad. and the wife who's making out with the tutorial character of the series. On what I guess is supposed to be like the getaway, the second honeymoon or something. As they're making out in the bed, they're still fully clothed, but they're trying to get in the mood, right? She tells, the major dad character that she's melting and everything. And that's before shenanigans in the room happen, like things go off and all that. But yeah, she tells him she's melting. And, you can imagine that if that was animated, that you probably would have started seeing her drip a little bit, indicating she was doing so. Which is why, again, I think when you go back in time and you look at when this first, reared its head, why this gag is around. Because like I said, I think someone realized, hey, we need visual representation. Now, how they came up with the idea of needing visual representation, one can only imagine that maybe they were on a romantic date with a wife, the fiance, the girlfriend. They were making out, and the girlfriend basically felt like, or maybe the girlfriend, wife, fiance, probably told their date, their boyfriend, their fellow fiance, their husband. Maybe they told them that they feel like they're melting in their arms, and that's probably what. In that saying maybe was what struck an idea of, hey, that's perfect. That's a perfect idea to use, as a gag. And we've seen it. We have seen it throughout all of animation and even comic book adaptations and fan works. We've seen it. So, yeah. Basically this is a gag that's been around for many, many years, and it's been interpreted through, in various different ways throughout the years. And it'll probably continue to be interpreted as time goes on. The fact that we have this Animaniacs revival on Hulu, and I don't know if they got a third season coming. I think they do. I'm not really sure. But we got this Animaniacs thing on Hulu. Not once have I ever seen the gag be utilized there. It still might happen, but we'll see. We got this new take on Tiny Toons called Looniversity. Like I said, Tiny Toons is basically back in the 90s the show that brought this gag back to the forefront in many, many different ways. So maybe we'll see it there. I'm not really sure. The fact is, there's many different examples of the gag being utilized, the trope, being utilized. But one thing is for certain. If this goes all the way back, all the way back to the 1930s and 40s, this thing has been around for nearly 100 years. That is something. This gag has been around for almost nearly 100 years, if not close to it. Even freaking Fairy Odd Parents, the original Fairy Odd Parents did it. They did it with that suave masseuse character who was once Wanda's love interest before she met Cosmo, and all he did is just flick his finger under a girl's chin, and she melted right into a puddle, and that's smiling. But then the next scene, he's talking to the other ladies, and the girl, as the puddle that she's become, is just eyes looking up into the ceiling like, okay, I'm a puddle level. That's all I'm meant to be. It's again, it's the way the gag's been interpreted is really intriguing, because sometimes, depending on the person that writes the story involving the gag, sometimes it's the character that goes through it themselves that pops back up, and sometimes it takes another character. Like in Tiny Toons, you have Roderick Rat, a Perfecto Prep, scooping up Plucky after he melts into a hot tub after being fondled by one of their own female cheerleaders. Basically, Shirley the Loon's Perfecto Prep rival. he scoops her up. I mean, not her, but Roderick scoops Plucky up to pour him and pours him back down. And Plucky's reaction after being restored is like, who, what, where, and all that. Basically, the way it was written is if Roderick wouldn't have done that, Plucky would have just gone down the drain with the rest of the water and not even cared, because basically he went through what I call a complete meltdown. In other words, somebody had to step in and restore them. Minerva Mink, same thing. Minerva Mink did the same thing in Moon Over Minerva. After she sees for the second time the Fabio alter ego of Wilford, she melts, and Wilford has to pick her up like a wet towel, mind you, and wring her out like such just to restore her. Because I've always made this joke when I've talked about this particular moment. I've always made the joke that Wilford could have walked off, gone into town, got something to eat, went and saw a movie, came back, and, after like 3 hours, came back, and Minerva would still be on the ground melted. And he could have still picked her up, wrung her out, and restored her, and it'll be like, no time has passed. So yeah, the way the trope, the gag, is utilized in a story, like I said, it all depends on, who's writing that story, who's, adding that trope, that gag in to be part of it. Because sometimes the character will pop up by themselves. Like Babs did a weird, like Babs Bunny in Tiny Toons Adventures, or Tiny Toon Adventures. Babs did a weird interpretation of it in Europe in 30 minutes after she saw the royal couple. And she remained as a puddle to the point that her friends, ran after the royal, or followed after the royal couple, and they ran right through her like she was a regular puddle. And it was after, I think Hampton was the last one that did it, that she basically popped back up and restored herself. But basically, she stayed as a puddle just long enough for them to run through her and splash like little bits of her all over the hallway in the castle before she restored herself. Again, the point is, it all depends on how it's written and weaved into the story. And to me, it works either way. It definitely works either way. And sometimes they just let the character be melted, and then that's it. That's how they end the scene. And then the next scene, the character is fine. I mean, Tiny Toons Wonderful Christmas, the Tiny Toons Christmas special at the Wonderful Tiny Toon Christmas, they did that with Babs. The Captain Flamingo short or mini episode, Blindsided, did that with Elizabeth. So on and so forth. So yeah, it all depends basically on how, like I said, how it's utilized in the story, how it's interpreted in the story, and all that. But one thing is for certain, as the WWE likes to now say, then, now, forever, which is the new slogan, or the newest slogan that they've been using for a few years now, then, now, forever. The same could be said for the Lustful Milk gag. It is a gag, it is a trope that has been used then, in the past, now in current times, probably still will be, depending on what happens with Luniversity and a new season of Animaniacs or whatever. And forever, and of course, it's going to be something that's used forevermore, no matter how it's used, whether it's used in official media or in fan works. I mean, sometimes people will use them in crossovers. Yeah, they'll use it in a crossover. That's no joke. No joke. They will use it in a crossover. One particular is an Owl House mask crossover. It's called The Owl Lady's Chick or something. And in the TV tropes description of Lustful Melt, they have all these subcategories, right? And one of them is fan works. And under it, it has one for Steven Universe, where Pearl does it. And another for this crossover where Amity kisses Luz on the cheek for getting back her library card because Luz was wearing the mask or something like that, or subjected to the mask tuned physics because she was wearing the whole thing or part of it. According to the description, she melted. So even fan works, depending on, or no, not depending, but no matter what, they work on, as a story aspect, if they want to add in, that gag, they're going to add in that gag, period. They are. So, to me, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you feel about it, this is a gag that was used then, now, and forever. Oh, it has been used then, is being used now, and will be used forever, no matter how it's looked at. No matter how it's looked at. No matter how you feel about it or anything, it is out there. It is out there, and it will be utilized to the best of its abilities. There is no getting around that. No getting around it. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Let me know how you feel about the Lustful Male gag. How do you feel of its utilization, if you will, in stories? Are you a fan of it? When did you first see it? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Live chat. You can chat during the live chat of the premiere, and super chats and super stickers will be open and available. Super thanks after.